We're back again here with Sandy and Josh Greenberg, who recently marked the 12th anniversary of the death of their daughter that state officials have said for the past dozen years that it was a clear-cut suicide. The evidence points to anything but, according to experts, according to Greenberg's, and according to myself, in considering what I've researched on this case. There's a lot of doubt that it's a clear-cut suicide. So
I think we can add one more thing, Larry.
Yeah.
The millions of people who have heard the various podcasts and presentations by gentlemen like you and women like you. There are millions out there.
In fact, you've had a petition going. The last count I saw was 150,000.
That's correct.
And presented it to authorities to open up the case again, which you've been trying very hard to do.
All we've tried to do, Larry, and then have an independent, unbiased investigation led by an independent, unbiased person.
Right.
We haven't pointed our fingers at anybody or anything. We haven't said anything negative, but now we're starting to say negative things about certain people.
Feel free.
Well, there's a lawsuit going on now that involves the medical examiner, the head medical examiner, Galino, and Osborne, and what's her name?
Lindsay Emery.
Lindsay Emery. And I believe a detective, and I believe they just, you're going to love, I love this term, high immunity, took a assistant district attorney, what's her name, Sandy?
Ann Pontario.
Off the case by a judge who issued his ruling about 9 o'clock on a Friday evening.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the term high. I think of Mel Brooks. What can I tell you, Larry? What?
High Anxiety was his movie. No,
right, I know. But it still is an uphill battle. The only people who think suicide was a clear choice are the officials of the criminal justice system of the city of Philadelphia and our former attorney general and his staff.
Who is now the governor of Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, he's the governor. Okay.
Okay, well, considering that Josh Shapiro, who was previously the DA that helped bottle up this case, he had it for 4 years. Twice you approached him to reconsider it. Twice he said clear-cut suicide, nothing to see here, folks, move on. Now that he's governor, do you think that increases or decreases the chances of him finally having a more of an open mind about this, or will it be status quo?
I think it's being worse than status quo. I think now he's in a position to use politics or pressure against other officials to keep the case going the way it has been with the suicide. That's my gut feeling.
Well,
I hope I'm wrong. I hope somewhere in his heart there is some empathy for what Sandy and I are trying to do. We're not trying to wreck the world. We would just like our daughter's suicide to be reevaluated by impartial people and looked at. We have evidence. I'm sorry. You want to say something, Larry?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
We have evidence to support our case. The district attorney or the assistant district attorney or whoever they are in Philadelphia are using legal precedent.
They're not providing any evidence on their end. They're not providing any
evidence. They're not arguing that she didn't
documentation that they've done any work at all.
They are not.
They're just basically stalling and deflecting and
using legal precedent to fight us.
And I don't know why we have all this pushback.
We don't know,
especially when they have declared it a suicide. If it's a suicide, then why can't they come forth with all the material that they have in their possession and are not releasing? Suddenly everything is disappearing. They don't have it. They have every excuse for why the student didn't have his homework.
Something that has to be taken a look at. Suicide in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is not a crime. That means there's no crime in this case. Now, I understand that the police.
Therefore, since it's not considered a crime, the official ruling is suicide. If it's not a crime, there is no reason to withhold any of the records that you've been trying to get for the past 12 years.
Bravo.
Spot on.
Yeah.
If they want to call it suicide, fine. It's not a crime.
Okay,
So-
and that's what they want it to be, a suicide. So if that's the case, then let's stay in your lane and show us what you got.
Well, that's a quick review for the viewers that don't know all the history of this. Your daughter was found stabbed to death in her apartment in Manayunk, Pennsylvania, 12 years ago on on
January 26, 2011.
Originally, it was with the district attorney's office in Pennsylvania. At the time, it was Larry Krasner. He recused himself when he became DA because he was the original lawyer for you. So it was kicked over to Josh Shapiro's office, who was the attorney general.
Larry, I would just like to interject one thing at the time. At the time of her death, the medical examiner called it a homicide.
Right.
Now, after a couple of months, they had a secret meeting with no records between a police detective, a assistant district attorney, the head medical examiner, the medical examiner Osborne, who did the autopsy, and wrote the certificate, and I don't know who else. We will refer to them as Jane and John Doe. I've learned a new legal term. Then Krasner, as you said, was our attorney, and you take it from there.
Yeah, so Krasner was your attorney. So when he became DA in Philadelphia, it was considered a possible conflict of interest. So he kicked it over to the attorney general's office, who at the time was Josh Shapiro. And for 4 years, it was in his hands. During those 4 years, you appealed to him twice to reconsider the case, to reinvestigate it. He said, nothing to see here. No evidence has pointed to anything but a suicide. You've had investigators and a lawyer, Attorney Pedraza, filing appeals and lawsuits. There's 2 of them going right now. One to overturn Marlon Osborne's declaration that it was a suicide. He was the original medical.
Well, that was a trial we're trying to have. The city went to the judge who was supposed to hear that and filed an appeal twice, and he said no.
Right.
Then the city went to a higher level court, and we have had the 15-minute arguments by our attorney and the city's attorney, and we're waiting for the verdict. Okay.
Right.
Now, one more thing. I'm sorry, Larry.
Yep, go ahead.
The judge who was going to hear the case and research the case, 2 things that happened during that time. One, a representative of the judges, plural, came to us and the city and said to the city, "You're not going to win. Negotiate with the Greenbergs." So they offered us that when the medical examiner had a chance, she would look at the case and we would give up the right to sue. The other thing is the judge who was going to hear the case wrote a 16-page legal brief. I don't know what the term is, with all the footnotes and all the legal paraphernalia that you expect in a thing. Obviously, it was not something that was done at night, the night before he gave it in. Very extensive, supporting our position that we should have the right to a trial. And he submitted that to the 3-judge panel on the court that was hearing the appeal. Take it away.
Yeah. So you that's yet to be resolved. Now, there's also a second lawsuit which was filed against the several officials, the city of Philadelphia, the DA, the Philadelphia Police Department, and the medical examiner's office, and that alleges a conspiracy among all those officials to cover up the true cause of your daughter's death. Now, that's the second lawsuit. Where does that stand right now?
Well, the lawsuit was really a lawsuit saying that with malicious misconduct, they're trying to cover up a homicide.
Right.
That lawsuit, we have, I believe our attorneys have filed for discovery, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they have balked at it, the city, and they're going to file appeals to prevent it. There is nothing that the city will not do to keep us out of court with them. Nothing.
But so if the city does in fact believe Ellen's death was a suicide, why are they going to the extremes and the amount of time and financial efforts to not show us everything they have?
Isn't there something called serve and protect that was supposed to be what public officials are supposed to do? Well, they're not serving and protecting my daughter. And she was a person.
A taxpayer in Philadelphia.
She was also a person who, aside from dying from 20 stab wounds, had bruises on her body that were indicative of abuse. She was an abused woman. And I've never heard one word from the police except saying that she was a Pilates instructor, possibly, or a yoga instructor. And those were where those bruises came.
Not likely.
Unlikely, totally,
It's
Larry.
like a fraudulent invention.
Yeah.
So
Also,
that would mean, wouldn't that mean then, Larry, there was somebody out there who abused a woman and possibly committed homicide to cover up the abuse?
also, there was evidence that the body had been moved.
Oh, unquestionably.
The blood stains went this way. Now, if she supposedly died by self-inflicted suicide wounds, the blood would have been flowing down. So, I mean, that's a contract. There were so many loose ends here that were never properly investigated by
And
all.
so
But
let's circle back to the 911 call
oh, God.
when the fiance seemed to know how deep the knife was that was in her chest.
How many inches, centimeters?
How is that possible?
Also, I'd like to go back to your description of blood, the blood. Blood travels according to gravity.
Right.
If Ellen was the sitting position that she was found, the blood would have gone down her cheeks into her neck. Ellen's position when she was sitting had blood going from the angle of her nose to her ear. So that means the blood flowed horizontally and then coagulated horizontally,
Which takes time to coagulate.
which is physically impossible to help with coagulation. It's just physically, it can't happen.
And that was never noted or addressed by the authorities, that apparent contradiction.
Another thing, also, the authorities said she had no defensive wounds. Well, if you looked at her wrists, they were bruised. Also, she had a wound to the top of her head. How did she get that if she was committing suicide?
And why was the
Let me
knife
finish.
block on its side?
I don't care about that. Why?
Well, it's a
Why did?
sign
How did
of
she
a
get a?
struggle.
How did she get a wound on the top of her head if she was stabbing herself in the back of the chest, even at strange angles?
No.
And why are the knife wounds smooth and some are serrated?
Only one knife was found, correct?
Correct.
But one knife that has smooth borders and one knife that has serrated edges are described in the autopsy descriptions of each
The wounds
wound.
of the wounds.
You know, folks, it seems like the authorities up and down the line have gone out of their way to not thoroughly investigate this case in any kind of a professional way. What do you think's going on? I mean, why this resistance for the past 12 years against?
What do you, Larry, what do you think?
I think,
The why is the big question, Larry.
Okay, but I want to hear what Larry has to say.
well, without being specific and naming any individuals in particular, since we can't say that at this point, it seems clear to me and so many others that have looked at this case that somebody of great influence and power was able to keep this case covered up. Why? We don't know.
Yes, there's a big why here, Larry. Why have so many people lied? And you know what? That's true, what I'm saying, and fabricated things in this case. I mean, 3 months after the case was closed as a suicide, autopsy pictures were sent to a forensic investigator / instructor in Florida. 3 months. All of a sudden, these pictures got to her file. She was talking to Tom Brennan, our investigator. You know who I'm talking about. Very reputable young man. And she said, this is not a suicide. This is a homicide. So why was somebody sending those pictures 3 months after the case was closed to Florida?
Well, also, it's very interesting, from the very beginning, Marlon Osborne, the medical examiner who did the autopsy, originally declared it a homicide. Then
Right.
he's talked to by certain officials, including police, from what we understand, and they persuaded him that that finding was erroneous and it was actually a suicide. I mean, that in itself is, to say the least, extremely odd.
Let me talk, please.
Questionable.
2 things there. Number one, the police are not supposed to tell the medical examiner to come to a conclusion.
Right.
Number 2, under oath, at his deposition, Marlon Osborne said, knowing what he knows now, he would have to change it to homicide or undecided. Has he done that?
Isn't that
Let her
part
finish.
of the medical examiner's oath, whatever it is that to,
Their own Hippocratic oath, so to
I
speak.
mean, he contradicted himself. He knows the truth, and still the man didn't step up.
Why not? He testified under oath that he'd have to change it to a homicide or undecided. Undecided is fine with us. And we have not, Larry, I'm going to reiterate something. I want to emphasize something. We have never pointed a finger at it or accused anyone of this crimes, have we?
Right. Well, what for the folks who haven't been following this, although we have thousands have, many thousands. Millions, actually, yeah. You're right. It's been on national TV, so a lot of people know.
A number of times.
But
it was on the other night.
Yeah. But for those who may not have been following it in detail, set the stage for us. What happened that night? Your daughter came home from school. It was a snow day, so she came home early. Go through it for us, the basics.
Well, basically, there was a northeastern snowstorm. I'm sorry about that. And Ellen went through her class list and reached out to all the parents to let them know that school was closing early so that each child would be accounted for to get home safely before the storm got really bad. She did that. Then on her way home from school, she went and filled up her gas tank on 1/26, January 26th.
2011.
Right. But that's the time. It's kind of crazy that that's what was indicated on the receipt. Okay, so she comes home. Then the things that we were able to obtain pictures from the medical examiner's office, it looked like she was preparing a fruit salad. It did not look to me like this was someone, and her computer, the one computer was on wedding planning stuff. The other thing was grades. So none of it looked like she was trying to indicate ending her life.
Who discovered the body?
Fiance.
And his story was that he had to break into the apartment.
His story was that he broke in.
Everything is on his account.
He broke in. There's some part of it that said he did not go up there alone, but we know he went up there alone because we have the affidavit of the person who was the only person on duty that night who was at the front desk. And we also have video of him walking in before he went in the elevator. He supposedly broke down the door. I say supposedly. The medical examiner's pictures of the swing lock, it was not a bolt lock, it was a swing lock, show that like it was bent and some screws were missing, but it wasn't unhinged in any way. So whoever got through that door that night was a very thin man or woman.
Yeah, if at all possible. So the fiance is the one who he says he had to break through the door because it was locked from behind. Ellen had locked herself in. She wasn't responding to his calls from outside in the hallway, so he finally broke through the door, and he finds her. Oh,
What I find perplexing is that everything is based on the fiance's account, the fiance's delivery. There's no one that can validate the things that he's saying.
We have a copy of the 911 call.
that he
And
made.
he's saying that she was lying down. She was saying there was blood everywhere. Well, Ellen was not lying down. She was propped up against a kitchen cabinet on the floor. That's why we made such a big deal before in our discussion about the blood running from her nose to her ear.
He might have been lying down originally. That's why the blood flowed that way. But the autopsy photos, the scene photos show she was propped up, and that would have been a different blood flow.
Well, how did she get like that?
One of our experts, Henry Lee, if people look up that name, they'll find a very prominent forensic scientist, whatever you want to, I don't know what the title is, but he's very prominent. He's no backyard guy. He claims the scene was changed. Staged. That's the word they use. I'm sorry, Larry. Staged. We have hired some of the best we can get our contact with to review the case. Henry Lee was one of them, and he said it was staged. So we believe, based on what the evidence, we're going to stick with evidence again. Ellen was sat up. My English isn't too good. I'm sorry, Larry.
So the fiance.
Then what happened was the fiance was in there talking to the 911 operator, who, let's get to the chase, were suggested he do CPR on her. And he looked, and I think the exact words are, "Do I have to?" And then eventually he went over to her, and after a few minutes, oh my God, he saw there was a knife in her chest.
She must have fallen on it.
This knife, the handle of this knife was probably easily 5 inches long, had a white towel on it, and had Ellen's left hand on it. So it was, to say it was unnoticeable would be like the guy has closed his eyes and walking into a wall. I mean, you couldn't have missed this.
No, Rajaz, what you're saying is, according to his 911 call, when he walked into the apartment and saw her there, he didn't mention the knife at all.
No.
He went up to her, was supposedly leaning over her to consider CPR on her, that suddenly he noticed the knife, which was prominently sticking out of her chest right through her clothing, correct?
Correct.
So in other words, that would have been hard.
Not a glaring.
Go ahead.
That would have been hard to miss from the very beginning, as soon as you walk into the apartment.
Help! I need everything out. I just walked into my apartment. My fiance's on the floor with blood everywhere.
What is the address?
4601 Flat Rock Road. Please come. Help.
4601
Flat Rock Road.
Is this a house or apartment?
Oh no. Oh no.
Apartment.
It's an apartment.
What apartment number?
603.
Apartment 603.
603. Please, Harry, please.
Where is she bleeding from?
I don't know. I can't tell. She's.
No, sir, you have to calm yourself down in order to get you some help.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm looking at her right now. I can't see anything. There's nothing broken. She's bleeding. Ellie.
You don't know where she's bleeding from? Can't tell where the blood's coming from?
I think her head. I think she hit her head, But it's everywhere.
Okay, sir,
it's everywhere.
She might have fallen. Do you know what happened?
She may have slipped. There's blood on the table. Her face is a little purple.
Okay, hold on for rescue for her. Stay on the phone.
Fire Department 842. What's the address? No.
4601 Flat Rock Road. Please, Harry.
4601 Flat Rock?
Yes.
What's wrong?
I went downstairs to go work out. I came back up. The door was latched. My fiance's inside. She wasn't answering. So after about a half hour, I decided to break it down. I see her now just on the floor with blood. Like she's not responding.
Okay, is she breathing? Look at her chest. I need you to calm down, and I need you to look at her chest. It's really.
I don't think she. I really don't think she is.
Listen to me. Someone's on the way. Look at her chest. Is she flat on her back?
She's on her back. So I
Okay,
bring her.
look at her chest and tell me if it's going up and down, up and down.
I don't see her moving.
Okay, do you know how to do CPR?
I don't.
Okay, I can tell you what to do, okay, until they get there. I want you to keep her flat
Oh
on her.
God.
Hello?
Yeah. Hi. Okay.
Are you willing to do CPR with me over the phone until they get there?
I have to, right?
Okay, so get her flat on her back, bare her chest, okay? You want to rip her shirt off,
Oh, shit.
okay? You need to kneel down by her side.
Oh my God. Ellie, please.
Listen, you can't freak out, sir, because you
Okay, I'm trying not to. I'm trying not to. Her shirt won't come off. It's a zipper. Oh my God. She stabbed herself.
Where?
She fell in a knife. Oh no, her knife's sticking out.
Her what?
There's a knife sticking out of her heart.
Oh, she stabbed herself?
I guess so. I don't know where she fell on it. I don't know.
Okay, well, don't touch it.
Okay, so I just let her here now. I mean, what do I do?
No, I mean, you can't. If the knife is in her chest, it's going to be kind of hard for you to do CPR at this time.
Oh no. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Police, which operator? 277.
Is someone coming here?
Yes, they are. You said 4601 Flat Rock, right?
Yes.
Okay, someone's on the way. And the knife is still inside?
Wait, sir, what?
The knife is still inside of her?
Yes, I didn't take it out.
Was it her chest or what area?
It's in her chest. It's like it looks like it's right in her heart.
Okay, someone's on the way out there. Okay, just get.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Okay,
How old is
thank you.
she?
She's 27.
27. And there's no sign of life at all? Like,
No,
pinch her to her arm.
no, please don't be. What?
Pinch her under her arm and tell me if she responds to pain.
She's Ellie. She's not. Her arm, her hands are still warm. I don't know if that means, but there's blood everywhere. I mean.
I know, but you can't, and the knife is still inside of her. How far? Can you see how far it went in?
It looks pretty deep.
Okay.
It looks it's a long knife.
Don't touch anything. Yeah, don't touch anything, okay?
I'm not touching anything. This is I can't believe this though.
So wait, it was just you there with her?
We're the only ones here.
And she ran in the door, you said latched it shut?
No, I went downstairs to work out, and when I came back up, the door was latched.
Oh.
Like it was, it wasn't like it was, it was like locked from the inside, and I'm yelling, so I'm
Was your house
yelling and
broken into?
No.
So there's no sign of a break-in?
No sign of a break-in at all. I mean, there will be when you get here because I had to break the latch, but to get in.
Okay, 4601 Flat Rock, and this is a house, right?
It's an apartment, Flat Rock, apartment 603.
Okay, that'll help. Apartment 603.
Oh my God. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
I just can't, I find it so amazing how that wouldn't be the first thing anyone would notice when you see a knife in someone's chest.
We think it's, how you say, unbelievable?
Improbable.
No, I'll go with unbelievable. I'm sorry, Larry.
Another peculiarity of this case is in terms of how the police examined the apartment, the scene of her death. It was a cursory exam. Nothing was really done. The body was removed, and then the apartment is cleaned,
Sanitized
by a professional crime
sanitizer.
cleanup crew.
Correct.
All potential evidence was literally scrubbed clean and removed.
And this was all occurring simultaneously while Marlon Osborne was conducting the autopsy.
Right. So when police finally went back to
And they had to get a search warrant to come in the apartment, by the way.
examine it forensically, there was nothing to examine because the evidence had already been cleaned up with the police's suggestion and permission.
Well, there is one thing, and you may know more about this than I do. They never did a blood spatter with that luminol. Is that what the stuff's called?
Yeah.
And that is sometimes left around for a while. Am I right?
Yeah.
They never sprayed the apartment to find blood.
They never checked the trash cans or the trash receptacles.
Another irregularity, and forgive me for laughing, but I mean, I know this is very serious and tragic, but I mean, the absurdity of what happened is laughable. The lawyer uncle
The prominent lawyer uncle.
of the fiance, prominent lawyer uncle attorney in Philadelphia, who is now the president judge of the ethics committee,
Yep.
he entered the apartment with the permission of the apartment.
No, the police.
Well, the police said it was okay to let him
Right.
in. So the apartment manager, went along with that. So he comes in with, what was it, his son or a cousin?
His son.
And they remove a number of items before the police are able to examine them. And those items consisted of what?
Cell phone, Ellen's handbag with the keys, her credit cards,
They removed her work computer,
computers.
her personal computer, and the fiance's personal computer.
So the chain of custody at that moment is broken,
Right.
crystal clear broken.
Okay, that's true, and it's very prominent that she said that. But what I find extremely interesting, they left an engagement ring outside on the night table worth tens of thousands of dollars. That was I would say it was something large enough so you couldn't miss it, if you understand what I'm saying.
That was the engagement ring that came from the fiance's family.
Right.
Given to Ellen. So you would think that the lawyer uncle would have made sure he took that ring. It was a precious heirloom, but all they took was computer equipment and cell phones.
Correct.
And Ellen's handbag, and they saw us 2 days later, when they were picking up the suit for the fiance, they couldn't return Ellen's handbag with her keys and credit cards and her personal items to us when they came to the funeral. A lawyer that doesn't know about snail mail, UPS, or FedEx, something's missing.
Well, you may know this better than us. Can a lawyer do that, Larry? Is that normal?
Well, I mean, I would assume whether he could legally do that with the permission of the police, I guess he could, but whether he should have concerning ethics, that he would certainly know since he is now the president of the ethics board.
It's not usual, Harry. We both know that. I was being facetious for a second there.
To say the least. Finally, they did return it. The lawyer uncle returned it to the police, but there was no way of telling whether it had been tampered with, anything had been scrubbed. So in other words, as Sandy said, the chain of evidence had been broken.
And why couldn't he not return Ellen's personal possessions to us that day?
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing after another that was done wrong.
I mean, how sharp?
Well,
How sharp is that?
let's look at something else. I'm gonna swing way ahead. The Attorney General. Two things. Number one, my attorney at that time, a former Attorney General, and Tom Brennan, the investigator, had a meeting with some of the staff of the Attorney General's office. And they said that they had gotten Ellen's computer and cloned the hard drive.
Yeah.
There was a problem there. And what's the problem? We know what the problem is. In 2015, that computer was locked up. So in 2018, when they said they got it, there was no way to get it. They couldn't have had it.
So it's called a
when-
big lie.
So when Tom asked them about it, they just sat there quietly and said nothing. When he asked for a report on that, did he get a report? No, nothing. Then let's go back to the computer itself, the computers itself. As we all have just discussed, and you being more of an expert and an authority than us, the chain of custody was broken. So anything that possibly on that computer might have shown something in this case is garbage. It's useless. It's not evidence, I believe. Is that true, Larry?
No, I mean, yeah, it's useless in pursuit of the case or the facts because the chain of evidence is broken. You don't know what the original state of it was and whether it had been altered or not. I mean,
Correct.
Speaking, it's It's just absurd that the things that occurred, one thing after another in this case. Let me read from you. We should tell what happened was, while Josh Shapiro was still Attorney General before he became governor of Pennsylvania, he was accused by your team, your investigator, your lawyer, of conflicts of interest. Because why?
Actually, I believe he was accused of conflict of interest by a reporter and a fellow colleague of yours.
Mm-hmm.
Because number one, he had gone to school with, I believe, the wife of the prominent lawyer we talked about. And number two, I believe they also belong to the same
The
Jewish.
daughter of the prominent lawyer.
I stand corrected. And I think they were also members of the same Jewish temple synagogue. So after 4.5 years of him having the case, he decided that maybe there might be a conflict of interest, and he sends it back to Philadelphia.
Okay, let me read from you the statement that Josh Shapiro, who was then the then Attorney General, made publicly when he kicked the case over out of his office to back to the district attorney's office in Philly. Quote, building public trust in the criminal justice system is a core priority for the Office of Attorney General. The primary purpose of case conflict referrals is to help law enforcement avoid simply the appearance of a conflict so that the public has full faith in the outcome of a criminal investigation. While the Office of Attorney General does not have an actual conflict in this matter, circumstances beyond our control have created the appearance of a conflict, and our involvement is no longer serving one of the primary purposes of the district attorney's original conflict referral. As a result, now this is from Josh Shapiro, as a result, we believe that it is in the best interest of the public for this case to be referred to another office. Therefore, we are sending this case back to the Philadelphia DA's office so it may be referred to another county pursuant to Pennsylvania law. We wish Ellen's family nothing but the best, and our office regrets that despite our extensive work, our additional efforts have not brought more closure to the questions around her death. Sound sincere to you?
Sounds sincere. Sounds very nice. Very good wording. English grammar is probably very good, but total bullshit. They never called Ellen's psychiatrist she was seeing, which I had sent her to because something was wrong and I couldn't handle it, who said Ellen was not suicidal, who diagnosed her a problem as anxiety. And what's anxiety, Larry? You and I are driving on the turnpike and a big truck pulls up next to us, our little car, and we're anxious. Anxiety is not suicidal.
In fact, they never talked to you directly.
No one talked to us ever.
In the 4 years that Josh Shapiro had this case as Attorney General, his office and he never talked to you directly, nor did any of the other offices, correct?
Correct.
So, let me ask you this, folks. You've been at this for 12 years. You've been going through all this turmoil, all this inner anguish. It's kept the hurt of the situation fresh in your minds, the emotion of it being constantly repeated as you pursue justice for Ellen. You've gotten nowhere so far. 12 years later, do you still think you're going to get somewhere with this case and finally reach the truth about what happened to Ellen that night?
Last night at dinner, a former prosecutor in Brooklyn told me how I shouldn't waste money on this. I should get another opinion. And he was trying to be friendly and whatever. My only answer to him was, what happened if this was your daughter? What would you do? That's what we think. It's our daughter.
Sandy, how do you feel about it?
Well, number one, looking back, I have no regrets because I did the best I could with the information that I had. And I'm not sorry about anything we've done. And all of this information is in the universe. So I can't imagine how these Philadelphia authorities in the city of brotherly love lay their heads on their pillows at night, knowing that they are good people, because they're not.
I have another comment. I want to know how they look at their children, knowing what happened to our child. How do they do that?
Folks, we all feel for you. Anybody who's examined this case knows how ridiculous it's been, the investigation, and has a feeling for what you've been going through. To be continued.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank all the media who have helped us, because without the media, we would have been nowhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
See you again soon.